Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
This is the story of the one. The one who keeps multiple buildings running smoothly day after day. Plumbing that flows, HVAC that hums, cleaning supplies that keep surfaces sparkling. That's why she counts on Grainger. With easy reordering online and 24/7 support, Grainger helps her keep the products she needs on hand. So shelves stay stocked and buildings stay ready. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning, July 1st, and NBA free agency is heating up. We've got moves, more moves, potential moves, rumors of moves, leak negotiations. If you love the NBA soap opera, it's on right now. Some stuff's official. It's going to happen. And a lot of stuff's happening in L.A. Kawhi Leonard is out and LeBron James is out. We know Kawhi Leonard is going to Toronto in a move that, I don't know, feels like the old rearranging of the deck chairs for Toronto and the Clippers. I don't really see, I don't get it. I don't think this vaults either team forward. The Clippers are going to get, they're going to send Kawhi Leonard away, and they're going to get Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick. Now, they do get first-round picks in 31 and 33, and they get a pick swap next year, and they get a couple second-round picks in there. It's not going to help the Clippers win. It ought to help the Jazz jump over the Clippers in the standings this season, so there's that. And I don't see how Kawhi Leonard plays enough. I mean, if he's healthy, it makes Toronto better in the East for sure, but that's a big, gigantic if. So that's that deal. I just think for Jazz fans, it means mostly the Clippers probably go backwards here. I think at best they tread water. The Lakers are letting... The Lakers are parting ways. I was going to say letting go, but maybe LeBron wants out. We don't have a firm gauge on that. Everybody's very nice in public, nice social media posts. Thanks for the 8 years and the championship and the memories and the sold-out buildings and all that. And LeBron thanked him back. Where's he going to go? Golden State, Miami, Cleveland. Go play with Steph Curry. Go play with the friend you made in the Olympics, and we can have this royalty and legends tour. Or... go to the places you've been before, Cleveland and Miami. Miami to play with Giannis. Cleveland, it really does emotionally seem to put a bow on it. You know, and Cleveland's pretty good, so maybe LeBron, and apparently he's not looking for a lot of money here. I thought maybe veteran exception, but now there's some reporting out there. Maybe he'd even take less than that, maybe veteran minimum or something close to it. So that's intriguing. And the one thing that's official is he's told Clutch Sports, who obviously represents him, to go out and find everybody in the league who's interested. He'll listen to anything. So, yes, even the Jazz could make a pitch. Denver should make a pitch, right? I mean, the Joker needs good players around him. LeBron? I mean, LeBron and the Joker together, that'd be two pretty high basketball IQ guys on the court at the same time. So, who's to say? It does seem to make sense, you know, where there are relationships. Maybe that makes it a little easier to go. He's built a relationship with the guys in Golden State, and obviously he's been in Miami and Cleveland. Cleveland emotionally because it started there, and going through the East that doesn't look as good as the West. He had his most success in the East. The one thing about San Francisco I did hear is that, you know, with a wife and he's still got one daughter at home, they could stay in L.A. It's a quick flight. He's got all the money in the world to fly private jets back and forth, whether they want to come up for a weekend or, you know, they have a couple days off in their schedule. He can fly home for 24, 36 hours or whatever. And that's a whole lot easier to do from San Francisco, where you're looking at an hour flight tops, as opposed to trying to do it from, you know, Miami or Cleveland or wherever else. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, him leaving does open up a lot of cap space in LA. And a lot of what was being factored in, and the whole Walker-Kessler, now we get to the meat of the deal, right? A whole thing that's been factored in here with Kessler is, well, they can only spend so much on Kessler because they've only got so much room, and they're going to have some for LeBron, how much they need for LeBron, and now it turns out they need zero for LeBron. So LeBron may have given the Jazz a shaft one last time. Now, the fact is, though, they do need to replace LeBron. They do need other scorers. But apparently Luka Doncic has made it clear he wants a shot-blocking, rim-protecting center. And then basically they're going after their top priorities. Going after might not be right, but their top two priorities are in Utah and Detroit, and both guys are restricted. So they got to come big to outbid the other team, and they're pushing it up into the high 30s. I don't think this has so much to do with Kessler's value. I think this has more to do with them trying to figure out how much cap room do the Jazz have and how much can they afford to give up. The Jazz, with this deal, would be inching very close to luxury tax territory. And you get to go over, obviously they can go over to re-sign their own guys, so the Jazz can do it. But the penalties increase, as you're in it one time, then two times, and three times in 4 years, and you have to be out of it twice to reset it. So the question is, do the Jazz want to go into luxury tax territory this year and start that clock ticking, or do they want to hold off 1 year figuring, hey, let's look at how 28, 29, 30, and 31 shape out. That shakeout, that's when we're more likely to be making our championship push, and let's not go into luxury tax territory this year when you're probably getting playoff experience, and hopefully a lot of it. Hopefully it's not, first round out in 4 or 5 games, but maybe win a series and have a second series go deep so you get to play, 10, 12, whatever games, 14. I've been talking, I think it's been really clear to me that the Jazz need a veteran guard that will help them in the playoffs, someone to handle the ball in the last 5 minutes. We saw what a mess inexperienced players in San Antonio made in the NBA Finals in key spots. And they're just inexperienced, haven't been there before. And to put the hands and a ball of a veteran, or put the ball in the hands of a veteran, is a major advantage. But if they're going to sign Kessler, I don't see where they're going to go get the $15 million I thought it would take to sign this guy, unless they're willing to sprint into the luxury tax and possibly over the first apron right away, which kind of locks in their roster and limits their possibilities. So we'll see what they want to do. One thing I did read that's intriguing, and a second thing that factors into this, is some of you have pointed out in a social media post, we got the question up on Facebook about Kessler and should they pay the mid-30s? And I think that the Lakers are clearly picking that number based on how much it jams up the Jazz and how much the Jazz are likely to match it. Because they know if they come with $32 million, the Jazz are going to match it. They just are. Excuse me, I don't have any sources, but I'm just telling you all the logic, all the tea leaves points in that direction, and the Lakers just don't dare risk it. They got to go big if they think they're going to really have a chance to get Kessler. And I don't know that they'll get him at 37. And one thing, a couple things working with the Jazz. Some of you have pointed out, hey, California taxes are way higher. Yes, he could pay about 9% more there. So basically, you get up to $35 million. You're talking about $3 million. Ballpark is what he'd be giving up. It's $34 million in Utah is the same as $37 million in LA just because of the state taxes. That's before you consider, more expensive homes, blah, blah, blah. So that's one thing, and I'm sure the Jazz will point that out. And then the other thing is the Jazz can front load the contract. They've got more breathing room now, and maybe they let some guys go that they were planning on keeping. Looking at you, Cody Williams. And free up some space and front load Walker Kessler's deal. And maybe he does get 40 right away. But the CBA does let you put the money up front and lets you take it down up to 8% per year. So it could be 40. They could walk it back to 37. They could walk it back to 34. Put that with the fact that the cap's supposed to go up about $10 million a year, which means the luxury tax could go up even a little more than that, 11 or 12. That could give the Jazz a little breathing room going forward in 2028, 2029, et cetera. So I wouldn't be surprised in the end if Kessler's deal is front-loaded. To what degree depends on what moves they're anticipating making now and what moves they think they might want to make later, and they'll kind of have to guesstimate on that. But those are two things I think the Jazz have, as far as they could just match the Laker deal, but they could also negotiate with Walker and say, hey, we can match in this deal, or we could give you this. Because if you get your money up front, you can invest it up front, and your money can start making money, and, blah, blah, blah. So I think those things to be pointed out. All of this has to be figured out. If it sounds complicated and gives you a headache, well, Austin Ainge is the one who wanted this job. This is a part of the territory. This is part of the deal. So I do think for those of you who are thinking, I want to see the young guards play, I don't really want to bring a veteran in. PK has brought that up. I think watching this play out, because now we know how much money they're giving the backup center with Nurkic. And we can look at Peterson, he's going to be slotted in at about $13 million and 11. So now if Kessler's coming in, 35, 36, 37, 38 million, whatever, you can start seeing there's just not a lot more room. They're getting pretty close to the old luxury tax right there. So, and they could let somebody go. Cody's, they got a lot of guys making about $3 million. They got about 4 guys there. So they wouldn't get a lot of savings bringing someone in on veteran minimum, because Collier's at $2.7 million, Filipowski's at $3 million, Svi Malik is at $3.8 million, and Bryce Sensabaugh's at $4.8 million. Then you get to Cody Williams at $6 million and John Conchar at $6.1 million. So there could be some savings there. We'll have to see what they do. And maybe Conchar is that veteran they want on the perimeter. Cody doesn't really fill that bill, so that was why I threw his name out first. But we'll just have to see how this plays out, because the Lakers and the Jazz are going to be playing every angle, and Walker Kessler has leverage, so he's going to get paid. All right. There's the early take on the NBA. That was a pretty busy 24 hours. There's more stuff going on. We'll get to that coming up. We'll spend a lot of time on the NBA this morning, to be sure. Definitely part of the plan. All right, coming up, we got Eric Pincus talking salary cap issues. We got Brandon Huffman talking college football recruiting. We'll get to that in this hour. Later this morning, John Bryce is going to join us to talk college football. He's from USA Today. Did a big story on Kalani Sitake and BYU. He's going to be here at 8:30. And Larry the Laker at 9 o'clock, the end of the LeBron era. And Larry ought to be salty and spicy over that. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast!
An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Eric Pincus joined us yesterday before LeBron left, before we knew he was out. We don't know where he's going, but he's leaving the Lakers and going somewhere. So, there have been some developments, but nonetheless, Eric Pincus with some interesting thoughts on the Jazz and salary cap space and where this might be going. Here's Eric Pincus with PK and I.
Eric, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
For people who don't know, Eric, you made your name as a writer for multiple reasons, but one of the big one was understanding the salary cap and understanding the finances and using that to help predict what teams were going to do and needed to do. And do you know who's sitting in that spot right now? Well, with the second apron, I guess a lot of teams are, but the Utah Jazz are for sure. And we were curious what you thought of the Jazz offer to Kessler and what you thought of Kessler's meetings with apparently 3 teams. The Athletic reporting that, Tony Jones. Where do you think the line for the bidding will go for Kessler and how long the Jazz should stay in it? That's a lot all at once. Jump in wherever you'd like.
Well, I mean, to go backwards, how long is an interesting question because he's restricted. And the reality is restricted players have a tough go. It is the toughest spot to be in as a player. So the team has the leverage to wait all the way until about October, technically. So time frame, it doesn't have to be a rush. I'm not saying it should go to October, but that's what we saw with guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Quentin Grimes and some of the guys last year who were restricted. So it's not abnormal for these things to wait. It's up to the agent representing Kessler to try to push it through and to try to get something going. So and then time frame, there are very few teams that really have money, and they have money now. One of those would be the Lakers, and I think that's the obvious pursuer. When they say three teams, I kind of read that as the Lakers, and the Lakers. I'm not sure who the other two teams are. Like the Bulls traded or are trading for Nicholas Claxton. They have that spending power. The Nets could make a run. I'd have to look at what their books are going to be after some of the moves they're making, but they could theoretically make a run. And then there are some sort of upstart teams that can get to cap room, like maybe the Clippers if they trade Kawhi, or maybe the Pistons if they don't pay Jalen Duren. So there are some potential suitors, but really it's up to the Jazz and Kessler to work it out. And at least the reported number, I believe, was about $25 million starting salary. And so you figure, the max is 41. He's probably shooting for closer to anything above 30, 35 in that range. And so that's kind of at least my opinion, the range of what they're negotiating. Forget the number of years and all that is a much bigger number, over 4 or 5 years or whatever. But I'm saying, probably the negotiation is over $25 to $35 million starting salary.
Okay, so that's the framework of the salaries, right? The range that you just established. How much do the Lakers then want him to be able to be in that position to offer that over 30, getting close to 35?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it feels like their primary goal is to upgrade at center. That seems to be what they're trying to do now. DeAndre Ayton opted into his contract. He's got about $8 million. They'll probably, I assume, bring back Jackson Hayes. But to upgrade to Kessler, who's somebody that has been linked for at least 2 years, maybe longer, with the Lakers. There was a time where the Jazz considered trading him earlier and ultimately decided not to. And I believe the Lakers have been in on Kessler for all of that time. They want a rim protector, somebody who's got real height. How high they'll go is ultimately the question, and they could get to that if the demand was 35 or 32.5 or somewhere around there, something above 30. They could make what's called an offer sheet. And an offer sheet is it's a contract, but it's one that the Jazz would have a day to match, and that you could sign that with the Lakers on July the 6th, and so the Jazz would have until the 7th to decide. And then you're really choosing, do you want to commit that money and keep Kessler on what would be a 4-year deal, probably starting at around 32, 35, somewhere in that range. Maybe it has a trade bonus. Maybe there's some other favorable language in it that makes it ugly. Or the alternative is if the Lakers are going to do that and you aren't going to match that, maybe you negotiate with the Lakers and do some sort of sign-in trade where they get Kessler and maybe the Jazz get something back. But, the Lakers, what that gives them is that gives them surety. They don't have to wait and wonder if the Jazz will match, but they're not going to give up a ton because if the price is too high, they'll just do the offer sheet and force Utah's hand. And then if they match, then the Lakers would just have to have a really good plan B, which I don't know if they have at this point.
So do you think in the end of the day the Lakers are going to be able to pry Kessler away from the Jazz one way or another, whether it's, like you said, a sign and trade, the signing that isn't, or the offer that isn't matched?
Well, it's really up to the Jazz and their their framework, their situation, their decisions. Like, do you lose this kid for nothing and let him walk? Or do you get something out of this situation, or do you keep him? And the challenge is if you match an offer sheet, then he can block a trade for a period of time. And so there are some issues. There's just some issues. Like there's one other option would be what's called a qualifying offer, where let's say the Lakers Kessler doesn't sign this offer. Lakers don't give him this giant offer. He can come back for $7 million. And, the challenge there is also trading him becomes difficult for a lot of, various reasons. It's difficult to get value because he can block a trade. The team that gets him doesn't really have the right to pay him significant money. So it's really up to the Jazz. And, you obviously know the Jazz have, Jaren Jackson and Larry Markkinen. And then there's a report that they're keeping Nurkic. So, and not to mention they have Filipowski. So, there's already a decent number of big guys and sizable, a lot of money, not to mention that you're going to have to pay, if you're the Jazz, Keontae George, probably an extension this summer. And if you don't pay him an extension this summer, I'd be surprised. But if they don't, then they're going to have to pay him next year. So it's not necessarily Kessler's number this year as much as it is like how much do they really have an appetite to carry in salary with Keontae at a big number, Jaren Jackson Jr. Marketing. You got Nurkic, at some point it feels like Kessler's expendable, but I don't know their final decision, and I think everyone's sort of wondering as well, probably including the Lakers.
It would seem like if they decided that Kessler is a part of their future and they bring him back, then they would have in mind down the line, as you said, not necessarily for this year, but down the line, they'd have to get rid of one of the other guys, and maybe that could possibly be in their mindset that we'll hold on to this for a couple years and then move one of the higher-priced guys, which is difficult, but I think as we've seen is doable. I guess the thought being that maybe that they think that is plausible, or they just let him go. It seems like those are the options.
Yeah, I mean the Jazz have control, so it's a position of strength. It's their decision, and you're absolutely right where they could say like, let's just keep him. We'll pay whatever it ends up being. It may be very expensive, and then they have the options because we don't really know. The Jazz don't. No one really knows what this team is and what they look like and how it all fits together. You have the kid they drafted in Peterson, who's a nice, really exciting young guard. Does that backcourt with those big guys, including Kessler, jump the team forward from being like, and obviously they were lousy this last year, but it kind of seemed intentionally lousy.
Right.
So, this team could jump not just to play-in, but even to playoffs. We don't know how good Minnesota's going to be. I don't think they're catching up to the Thunder or the Spurs, but the Nuggets we're still waiting on. What are they going to be? But the Jazz can make a run, and I'm not saying it's a run to the finals or anything like that, but they could be a serious team. And with that in mind, wouldn't you want good players? And obviously, if the Lakers did a sign and trade or some other team did a sign and trade, you're going to get something back. But does like a Dalton Connect, move the needle? They've already had Jared Vanderbilt. I don't know that he helps. I don't know that the Lakers are giving away their first round picks. It may be more of a test and a push. Maybe it's better for them to just push a higher number onto Kessler. These are all things that we don't know, and we'll know soon, probably within a week. We may have an answer, but it's really up to the Jazz to decide what is in their best interest. I'm out of LA. Laker fans want what Laker fans want. It's not Jazz can't care about that. They can't even focus on what the Jazz fans want because they have to make the best decisions as a whole, regardless of what the fans want. They have to make the best decisions for the team. So, this isn't for Kessler. This isn't for any fans of any. This is the Jazz making the best decision on what they think leads to the best team. And that could mean letting Kessler go and not tying up that money, or it could mean that, put him down, whatever that number ends up being. They have the leverage, and then in a year's time or 2 years' time, whatever, when the money starts to get really crunchy, then you have to make difficult decisions. Make them when you have to make them, not now where, yes, you have to make a decision on Kessler, but it doesn't have to be, we're not going to pay him now because we'll have a problem later.
For the team that doesn't get Walker Kessler, whether the Jazz or the Lakers, and I liked what you said about the Pistons. They're looking to add something. I don't know that they have to add one specific thing. They need to get stronger somewhere. And obviously, they had a bunch of money to go after Reeves, and then they didn't get him. Reportedly, it was them who really put the screws to the Lakers and made that number get really big, really fast. So who's to say they won't do that again to somebody, and maybe they are one of the teams in on Kessler. But these teams that don't get him, where do they pivot? Who are the next guys and what do they cost? Because there's always that thing, hey, we might only get 70 or 80% of the player, but if we get him for 40 or 50% of the money in a salary cap world, that might be a bonus.
Right. Well, free agency has evolved in the NBA, and in the most recent collective bargaining agreement, the NBA and the NBPA, that's the agent side of it, they made it easier to make trades and easier to make extensions. It might be I don't know. Enough time has passed where the Gordon Hayward thing is really, Jazz losing Hayward because they couldn't extend him. That rule has more or less been adjusted, and so it's easier to make extensions now. And that means free agency, because more players are extending or more players are traded. It's easier to get things done without going to free agency. The next best players that are available, probably Mitchell Robinson, just won a championship. The Knicks probably can't afford him. Challenge with Mitch is that he gets hurt a lot. He is a reserve and doesn't start. Like, historically, he plays a limited number of games, limited number of minutes. Same thing with Robert Williams III, who is really nice player in the playoffs, like, has experience. He's somebody who is going to help any team. However, same issue, barely plays, the kind of guy you want to just make sure he's healthy when the time comes, and can help you. And he was really positive for the Blazers. There's vets like Vucevic. There's a guy, John Collins, who's not really a center. He's more of a power forward. I wouldn't want him as my center per se, but in a pinch he could certainly play that. Mo Wagner may leave Orlando instead of staying in his brother's shadow. But the list, Andre Drummond. Like the list starts to get. Marvin Bagley, more of a power forward. Jock Landale. It's not like a great market, and we may find like there's another trade to be had with some other center who needs to relocate, but it is not this robust market of there's these incredible players. But there's one other guy I'll mention. Try not to say it. Mamouche Kavili. I've been saving it because I'm not great at pronouncing his last name. And he's more of a power forward who can play some center, but he's somebody who's a good option, I think, for the Lakers as well. Or anybody who just needs he's a good scorer. He's tough. He's physical. Thought he had a good year. So there's guys out there, Kevon Looney, there's guys, but there's no one on the other than Duren, other than someone stealing Duren. Those are the two mainline dudes who can start for you, who can do a lot. And Kessler is even a question mark. Missed almost all of last year, but you're assuming that he's well past that injury.
How about the Lakers and LeBron? Obviously the Warrior thing has been heating up, and what do you think is going to happen there relative to the money that they're going to offer and what he's looking for?
Well, I don't think they can go back to LeBron at $50 million because all these conversations we're having, basically evaporate if they're paying LeBron that full money. They're paying Austin. They're paying Luka. They don't really, they have Ayton. There's just not a lot of money on their books outside, I guess, Vanderbilt. But if you put it all together with LeBron at $50 million, then there is no real chasing of Kessler and all these other things. So I think plan A, B, C for the Lakers is to find a way to upgrade properly around Luka Doncic. Like what he does is, he's a creating guard/forward, and you have Austin Reeves, who's a creator, creating his own shot, creating shots for others. That's what Luka does. Now you put in LeBron, and you're adding another creator who can score and create shots for others, and so like it kind of works. They got to the second round, although Luka wasn't healthy, but it's duplication at that role, whereas they don't have anything else in the other roles. Like you need shooters, you need athletes, you need defenders, you need size. They have so many needs, and if they put all of that into LeBron, that's a problem. So if it's not 50, what's that number? And if the Warriors can only offer up to 15, can the Lakers offer 20, and that's enough for LeBron? And can they go spend on Kessler and or Duren or other guys and still have $20 million and pay LeBron $20 million? And it gets really dicey and really difficult really quickly. They start to potentially lose others like Rui Hachimura, who could leave, Luke Kennard. You start going down the list. Sounds like they're going to lose Marcus Smart. So I personally, I'm not in charge, but if it were up to me, I would move on from LeBron. As incredible as he's had a career, as incredible he is as a, he's a star. He's still at 40, almost 42. He's still arguably the biggest or one of the biggest stars in the NBA. So I get it's not an easy decision, but it's you have Luka. You need to build around Luka the best way possible, and I don't think that coincides with LeBron, and you just have to put aside the emotion and the legacy and all of that and just accept like this team is really, really good, but not like great. Like they're a good team, they're a second round team, they're not going to be much more than that. So why run in place with LeBron when you really should be trying to build something that could be more than just a good team and maybe a great team? Not saying they'll get to a great team, but from the motivation point, that's what they should be striving for.
The goal should always be to chase the championship, but that can't be a next year thing for a lot of teams. That has to be more of a 2, 3, 4 years. There's just too much to be done. So the next thing in the West seems to be, well, get out of the play-in, get to the top 6, avoid Oklahoma City and San Antonio in the first round, and don't mess around with the play-in. Have some days off and get your guys healthy. Denver's been living in that space. The Lakers, Rockets, and Wolves were there this past year. Who do you think is falling out of that space? Who is moving in? If the Warriors get LeBron, could they move into that space? Do you see a world where the Jazz could or somebody else? Portland and Phoenix were 7th and 8th in the regular season. They didn't miss by much. Who's in the top 6 in the West? And I know you got to project here because rosters aren't set.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the challenge is, of course, health, and not everyone's going to be healthy, and that's where Luka wasn't healthy, KD, and you start going down the list of other guys who were Steph not being healthy, all that kind of stuff, Jimmy Butler. But let's say health, and so OKC, San Antonio are the top 2, and so we have room for 4. If I were to say today, based on what we know, it's the Rockets are in there. They're going to get Fred VanVleet back healthy and Adams, and they're already a very, very solid team. Imperfect, no doubt. All these teams are imperfect. I'd be curious about the Suns. I think they have a shot. I'm not sold yet on what the Timberwolves are pivoting to with LaMelo Ball. Like, it could work and it could be spectacular. I'm not sold on it. The Warriors with LeBron, yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that they obviously they're older and they're not healthy right off the bat. With Jimmy, are they also trading for Anthony Davis? But let's put them at the 6, 7, maybe higher. I think the Clippers are going down. I don't necessarily trust anyone else to climb. So, with Jokic being Jokic, and I don't know what else they do because I don't know if it matters. Like, just having Jokic probably puts them in that top 6. So, Lakers. Today we can't say that because we don't have enough information. So, if they get Kessler and round out the rest of the roster, sure, they'd be in that mix. I don't really understand Ja Morant in Portland, and maybe there's another move coming. They have a bunch of guys who need the ball and who are not nearly as effective without the ball, like Damian Lillard and Ja Morant, and then and Scoot Henderson who needs the ball, and then not alone. Drew Holiday can play without it. Shaedon Sharpe, like there's so many guys who are either point guards or need the ball to. So I'm not sold. I'd say Phoenix, Warriors. The point is, if you're a Utah fan, if it all comes together, it all clicks, and that team is healthy, and they make a few more good decisions, and Peterson is, let's say, anywhere close to Derek Harper, then, or did I say Derek? Dylan. Wait, I get so confused with so many Harpers. Dylan Harper. His dad, I watched him play. But yeah, the Jazz could reasonably make a run. I wouldn't say like today that they're going to be top 6 because it's just too much of an unknown, but are they in that top 10? They should be. And then from there, it's like, yeah, like if you're close, this team, I really like Keontae. He's a lot of fun. You have this young guard and you have the size. Obviously we don't know what it looks like yet, but Utah is in that mix to grow. Other teams, Dallas, New Orleans, I don't know what these teams are going to be. Maybes. But yeah, I'm excited to see. And the Clippers may trade Kawhi, and who the heck knows? So it's a fun time. This is the best time of year for me. This is my busiest time and the most fun outside of the games.
He's Eric Pincus, national NBA writer for Bleacher Report. You can read his stuff there. Eric, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
All right, anytime. Thanks for having me.
There's Eric Pincus. When we come back, Brandon Huffman talking college football recruiting, Utes and Cougars. Stay with us.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
DJ and PK brought to you in part by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. I bet there are a lot of people who work at Trajan Wealth who would like to know how the recruiting is going for Utah and BYU. And fortunately, we have Brandon Huffman here, national recruiting analyst for On3.com and Rivals, to talk about exactly that topic. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. We are curious how the Utes and Cougars are doing. It'd be easy to ask you who the best recruit they had is, but maybe there's one that maybe surprised you more, or you think is more undervalued, someone that they should be excited about that they don't necessarily know about because they're not sitting on the most stars and haven't been talked about since they were, 15 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I would say each school has a guy like that. I really like what Utah has done, coming out to the state of Arizona, where I now live, and getting a commitment from Jonah Lubno, who is a quarterback. I got a chance to see him play back in October. I mean, he's 6'3", 215 pounds, and kind of was a late emerger. Most of his recruiting attention had come from the Big Sky, but there's a guy who's 6'3", 215, and he's running an 11 flat 100-meter time, so he's a big athlete. Wasn't blessed with enormous amounts of skill position talent, and Utah kind of played the long game, obviously understanding that Brody Rudnicki, who they had targeted, was going to serve his mission and wouldn't be a 28, so they made sure that they got a 27, and they got Lubno, who's a big athletic guy who can run, which I know Utah is looking for in a quarterback. They want somebody that can get around and move out of the pocket, but now if you can get it from a guy who's 6'3", you're absolutely going to take somebody like that. And then I think on the BYU side of things, I really like Titan DeJong. I think he could play a number of positions. I think he's just a football player. And I think that's one of those phrases that, I throw around when a guy you put him in a position, he's going to make a play, whether it's on offense, whether it's on defense, but he's just a guy that's a football player. So I think from a value standpoint of a couple of guys that aren't necessarily rated super high, those are guys that I think are going to do some damage for the Utes and the Cougs respectively.
For 20-some years under Kyle Whittingham, they had a pattern of recruiting, right? Wasn't necessarily the highest-ranked kids, but they'd come in, be tough-minded, get better, and go on to the NFL, many of them. We've seen that. And now, obviously, he's gone. Morgan Scalley is somewhat of a disciple of Kyle Whittingham. Just from a general overview, has the recruiting changed much at all, or anything that you've noticed that is different? Or is it more of the same? They still get those same types of players? Because it seems here of late they've been getting a bunch of commitments.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we were just having this conversation up at the opening finals this weekend that nobody has consistently made recruiting sites look bad than Utah. They go get a player that nobody knows of, or that they beat out maybe some, G5 schools for, and then they develop that guy into a draft pick, or they develop that guy into a conference player of the year. And so I think that that's what Utah's always going to, do better than just about anybody in the country, is evaluate and develop. And I think that even though there's been a changing of the guard from a staff point of view, I don't think that that's going to change from a mentality point of view. I think that's at times you see, there's exceptions like a Kirby Smart and a Dan Lanning, a couple of defensive guys who, have the resources available and the draw nationally to go get elite classes. Nick Saban did as well. But I think a lot of defensive coaches, they want to win with an identity. They want to win with toughness, and they're going to go find guys that fit what they want to do schematically and aren't necessarily the guys that have the most stars, that aren't ranked the highest, but they're going to be the guys that they know fit into this program. And, I look at a couple of defensive linemen that they've got. Guy like Tiki Teeples, Jack Henderson, where, Utah was Jack Henderson's lone Power 4 offer. I think Tiki Teeples had maybe one other Power 4 offer, and it came from Oklahoma State early on. Then Utah offered. Then a couple of the Big 12 schools started to get involved, but Utah was one of the first schools in on him. Well, where has Utah consistently and traditionally done the best job of not just evaluating, but then developing? It's been on the defensive line. So these guys are kind of, boilerplate for what Utah has done so well, going back to Kyle Whittingham's, when he really took off in the Pac-12. And I think that's going to continue under Morgan Scalley. They want to beat you up front. They want to beat you with guys that are bigger, stronger, tougher. And I think that none of that's going to change, because that's kind of the mentality that Morgan Scalley wants his team to have. And I think there's two guys in this class that kind of speak to that.
Over the time Kyle was here, we got used to exactly what you said as far as the line of scrimmage. The secondary was always really good. Over time, you upgraded the linebackers and the tight ends. Running backs were usually really good. There were two positions he struggled to recruit. One was quarterback, one was wide receiver. Now, quarterback got better. They got 2 really good years out of Huntley, and he started for 3. And they got 2 good years out of Cam, and he was hurt 3 other years. And they just got a good year out of Dampier in the transfer portal. So quarterback was getting up to speed, and you've addressed that a little bit with the kid they signed out of Arizona. Wide receiver never got figured out. Is there any sign that Morgan will recruit wide receiver differently and better, or should we just think, hey, the acorn didn't fall far from the oak, and you're not going to be perfect, so that's just going to be a bit of a struggle there, but they're going to be good at a lot of other positions?
No, that's actually a great segue, because one of the commitments that they got on Monday was from Darnell Jackson out of Texas, a speed guy. I mean, a guy that can flat out run, 5'11", 165 pounds, but he's got some juice, he's got some acceleration, and I think that that's the kind of player that if you're Utah, you want. You want a guy that's going to be able to stretch the field. You want a guy that can give you options rather than maybe getting a bunch of possession receivers, guys that are going to move the chains, guys that are really good at downfield blocking to allow you to run the ball, but you need some weapons that are going to be able to stretch the field and get separation and allow you to go vertical. I think if you look at the Big 12 and how it's been, clear in the last couple of years that, you've got to be able to have some offense in order to compete in the conference. If you can add some speed, and I think this is where Utah already having a tie into the state of Texas well before they joined the Big 12, again, pays off going down into Texas to get Jackson. But then they also have a Dylan Sykes, a bigger receiver out of Southern California. They got Jackson Nikahu from right there in their backyard at Davis High School, who is another kid that can run. He's not the biggest. He's about 5'11", 185, but he can run too. So I think that there has been a kind of a clear expression of desire to get speed at the receiver positions, and they're not going to go away entirely and become this air raid run and shoot offense like we saw in the 90s and the 2000s in college football, but they're going to be adding a lot more passing to the offense. But I still think at the end of the day, again, most defensive coaches, they want to win by just punishing you at the line of scrimmage, and that means they want to run the ball down your throat 80% of the time if they can. However, you've got to have some diversity in the offense from a scheme standpoint. So I think that that's been a clear addressing by Utah this cycle, and I think it's being met.
Who's doing well recruiting-wise in the Big 12?
I mean, the easy answer is always going to be Texas Tech, because I think they're recruiting with a completely different set of circumstances in their favor. And I think that they're, obviously it doesn't hurt that they won last year. It doesn't hurt that they've got the resources to do so. But I also think what helps them is even before it became clear that they had the resources at their leisure is that Joey McGuire, being a head coach in the state of Texas as a high school head coach, gave him connections everywhere. So, they're one of those schools, though, that they're not just recruiting well from a conference standpoint. They're the only Big 12 school right now that is currently finding themselves in the top 25 and even the top 30 nationally until you get down to Kansas State. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Texas Tech is becoming a bigger name brand. It sure seems like we've spent this entire offseason talking about Texas Tech in some capacity, whether it was Braden Sorsby, whether it was Joey McGuire, whether it was Cody Campbell, whoever it is. But these kids are seeing that Texas Tech made it to the playoffs last year. They just saw one of their players get drafted in the second round, even though he's technically a Stanford grad, in David Bailey. But they're also seeing that Texas Tech has the resources, which is driving a lot of recruits' interest in the Red Razors. So I think they're just on a different level right now because they've got a lot of things working in their favor, to catch my drift.
Brandon Huffman joined us, national recruiting analyst for On3.com and Rivals. Brandon, I can't believe PK has restrained himself. This is so much discipline and poise from PK. You brought up kids leaving Arizona. He went to Arizona State. We've been doing this show literally for decades, and he's always said the Arizona schools struggle to bring kids home. This transfer window's helping them bring kids back. They're getting a little bit there. Do you think these coaching staffs, who both had a little early success here, are going to be able to keep kids home and sustain it? Or between 115-degree days and a lack of NIL money, is it a real uphill battle for these two? Or do you think they're making headway?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's two answers to that question. I think both are very dissimilar to each other, despite sharing the state. I think with Arizona, that's a basketball school. It's always going to be a basketball school, and that's going to be what the priority of the athletic department is going to be. And I'm not to say that Arizona basketball is going to spend as much as Arizona football is, but if you're a big-name elite basketball player, Arizona is going to appeal to you because you're going to get developed, you're going to get drafted, and you're probably going to get paid handsomely to go there. Whereas Arizona football, Brent Brennan is more salt of the year type of guy. Not to say Tom Millard isn't, I don't know him, but I've known Brent Brennan a long time since he was receivers coach at San Jose State. And they've done a really good job of focusing in Southern California, where Brent Brennan recruited heavily when he was at San Jose State and at Oregon State. But they're going to try to recruit some of the local kids. It's just they've got to go into the bigger metro area, which is right there in Arizona State's backyard. I think the flip side to that is Kenny Dillingham sits on kind of a landmine, or a gold mine in Arizona, especially being in the greater Phoenix area. But like you said, these kids have this desire to go national. They see the ability to go and play on the national stage. And I think you look at, the class this year, the top 10 players in the state, a number of them had Arizona State offers, but Will Mensel, who is in Chandler, goes to Oregon. You've got Noah Roberts, who plays at Basha High School, the state champion. He goes to Texas. Now, they did get a gigantic win in landing Jake Hildebrand, who's the top offensive lineman in the state. He spurned Utah and Texas Tech to go to Arizona State and stay home. But he's a little bit more of an anomaly. And Arizona State does this thing called the golden ticket, where the first day that they're, wink, wink, legally allowed to communicate with underclassmen is when they offer the local kids. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. By maybe playing by a set of rules that Herm Edwards and his staff didn't, it hurts them, but at the same time, it allows other schools to throw out an offer earlier, and now you're the 35th offer for a kid from Phoenix rather than the first offer for a kid from Phoenix. So I think, Dillingham has kind of made it clear he wants to recruit locally, but if these kids are going to be a little bit unobtainable, then he'll go into Texas. They've had a really good pipeline into the state of Texas in the last couple of years, and they've recruited, outside of the state of Arizona, and then they're kind of the rebound. If it doesn't work out for you nationally, when you go somewhere else, you're going to have a home here at Arizona State. And so he makes sure not to kind of, torch those relationships, but give those guys an opportunity. If it doesn't work out, you can always come home.
Brandon, we really appreciate you joining us, and this interview isn't over yet, but I want to establish some groundwork going forward. We never on this show, as an Arizona State grad, say the name Herm Edwards. If you must say it, it is preceded by an expletive, and you know the expletive, so we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's a holy day. I didn't want to use it on, and I didn't want to get banned from the show.
So those are the ground rules going forward as a loyal Sun Devil. How much has the transfer portal changed high school recruiting?
I get that question every single year because you see the tweets that the transfer portal is killing high school recruiting. I don't think that's true because the reality is these guys have to come from somewhere, right? I think what it's done is it's 100% sped up the recruiting process. Now, obviously, we used to be in an era where the first Wednesday of February was signing day. Then it scooted to the third week in December to be the first day that you could sign. Now it's the first Wednesday in December that could actually put pen to paper. But tomorrow, July 1st, it's kind of the unofficial signing day. Rivals is doing a summer signing day show because 90% of classes are going to be done by tomorrow. These schools want their heavy lifting done. They want to be able to go to the lake or the river or the beach in July before they get back in time for fall camp. All the camps are over. The dead period's in place. So I think that schools want the majority of their roster or their recruiting class done so that way those personnel directors can spend the entire fall watching college football games around the country, and especially, the G5 level or the FCS level, and find out who are the guys that we want in the portal when they come. Now we're seeing that the portal is opening a day earlier this year. It's going to, as I saw last week, it's going to be voted on, but now it looks like it's going to open on January 1st as opposed to January 2nd. And instead of it being a 15-day window, it's going to be a 10-day window. So it's going to make the urgency that much greater. But the reality is all it's doing is it's making better recruiting classes for G5 schools, for FCS schools, for Division II and Division III. Trinidad Chambliss, y'all saw it, take him to his team to the semifinals last year. He was a Division II quarterback out of high school. What's happening now is that those smaller schools are getting better players out of high school because instead of signing 25 guys in a class, schools might sign 18 guys in a class. Well, that means the trickle-down effect is now allowing for better classes. The problem is those FCS schools are only going to get that kid for 2 years instead of 4 years like they used to. If you watch the division or the FCS National Championship game last January, I think Twitter was mostly abuzz about saying, oh, well, this running back's going to look really good at, this Power 4 school next year. Oh, this quarterback is going to be awesome as the starter at this Power 4 school. You're even seeing, P4 schools dealing with that. I mean, how many times last year would I watch a Cal game and you'd see Twitter saying, oh, the next Miami quarterback, Jaron Chiave-Songapolatelli, having a great night tonight in this ACC After Dark. So the portal has certainly allowed for schools that have done a terrible job of evaluating and an even worse job of developing get bailed out by getting a player that somebody else evaluated and was able to develop. But the reality is, without schools shutting down their football programs, those schools are still having to sign players. So recruiting, it's just moved the calendar a little bit. It's moved the goalposts a little bit, and it's recalibrated the expectations of maybe that next tier of player who in the old days might have been a late add to a class. He might be going down a level to start.
Brandon, we appreciate the time, the perspective, and all the energy. Just remember the Herm Edwards rule when we have you back on.
Noted, and will never happen again.
There's Brandon Huffman from On3.com recruiting. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next. A busy, busy day in the NBA. LeBron and Kawhi leaving L.A. Stay with us.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.